I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org. Welcome to my kitchen tonight. I'm going to be making a soup. It's that time of year. I've been making a lot of soups, and tonight I'm going to be making the Winter Noodle Soup, and the recipe is located in the files of the 28-Day Challenge Facebook group. So this is another great recipe that's obviously very flexible. You can do really a lot of different things with it. So I'm going to be sticking pretty close to the recipe tonight with, I think, one exception. And we've got a couple of topics tonight, so let's go ahead and get the soup started, and then we will start in with the topics. So, so for this recipe, it's going to have leeks, carrots, and onions. So I'm going to get started with those first. I've got my Instant Pot warming up in the background. So the leeks, they get, I don't know if you can see that, but they get a lot of sand and grit inside the layers. So I'm just going to go ahead and chop this, and then I'm going to rinse it. I mind a little dirt, but I don't want sand in my soup. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've really been enjoying working with these leeks this month instead of onions. They're just a lot of fun. I really enjoy the flavor. I think I've become a fan. So I don't have any frozen peas and carrots today, so I'm going to be chopping my carrots. And I like to chop them kind of on the smaller side, about like that. But you can do it however you like. So for those of you that are new to this challenge, we had a few people sign up just right towards the end, and I don't know if you remember, but I said that that was going to be fine. If you guys wanted to join late, that was fine. But I use my Instant Pot a lot. You don't have to use an Instant Pot. I just happen to use an Instant Pot a lot because I have a small kitchen and it just is really convenient. Same thing with this celery. I'm just going to do I usually just cut mine like that on the ends where they're thicker, so I can get all the same size pieces. So this recipe calls for, like, I don't even know, like a half a cup of carrots and a half a cup of peas or something like that. I personally don't really measure. Oftentimes I just throw in what I've got available. Like I'm going to be putting in a couple of red potatoes into this dish. It doesn't call for potatoes, but I've got a couple of leftover, they're purple potatoes actually, that I just want to use up. So I've got one large carrot that I put in and 2 stalks of celery and a leek. I'm going to save these for something else. So here's my potatoes, and I'm going to give them a little bit of a peel. Not a lot. I'm going to take off some of the peel. You guys ever cooked with purple potatoes? See, they're not purple on the inside, they're just the skins are purple. I usually just like to take off some of the skin to make sure they're not green on the inside. Because if they are green, I either don't eat them or I really peel them well to get that green off. These look like they're fine. And again, we want nice small bite-sized pieces. So this winter noodle soup is kind of a variation of your traditional, kind of your Campbell's chicken noodle soup. Only we don't use chicken and we don't use chicken broth. And you know, if you're gluten-free, you could use a gluten-free noodle, or you could just not even do noodles. You could just do vegetables and broth, which would be good as well. Or you could substitute for the noodles, you could substitute any other type of like if you're gluten sensitive or if you're, you know, grain sensitive, you could substitute a grain that you can tolerate. So that's going to be different, a little bit different for everybody. But you could do, if you're not doing pasta, you could do, you know, barley or rice, quinoa. There's so many grains to choose from. Of course, it's winter time, at least where I live, it's winter time, and it's soups are nice this time of year. Okay, so I think we've got all the vegetables in the pot. And those are sauteing away, so now we will add our liquid. So this recipe calls for, I believe, 4 cups of vegetable broth, but I'm going to be doing my mushroom broth, which again, to anyone new, is just dried mushrooms blended into a powder. And so we do water, the mushroom powder, and some liquid aminos. And that is our broth. So I'm getting some water going, and I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of the liquid aminos. And a couple of spoonfuls of the mushroom powder. Do you guys hear that? Hear the steam whistle? I love it. It's quitting time, 5 o'clock. All right, so in goes the water. And I'm going to add actually a little bit extra water because I'm just going to be using some organic gemelli pasta, which are these little corkscrews. And since I'm going to be putting it right into the Instant Pot dry, I'm just going to add a little bit extra water. And I'm going to do just a couple of handfuls of that, maybe a cup and a half of noodles. And then if you want to, you could add your favorite herbs, like you could do parsley. I actually have some fresh parsley in the refrigerator. I might add a little bit of that. I'm looking for my... So this is herbs de Provence, which is just a mixture of herbs you can buy, you know, I don't know, I get it at the bulk section. Just gonna add a little bit of that in. It's just a nice floury herb mixture. We don't need any salt in this because the liquid aminos is salty. So I think that's all I'm going to do. Am I forgetting anything? All right, so we put that on and we pressure cook for, I'm going to do 4 minutes. Well, let's do 5 minutes since there's pasta in there. And we should be good to go. Okay. All right, so I don't know about you all, but for me, typically when I do soups, unless it's like a stew, like a barley stew, I don't know, I always like something with my soup, like a sandwich or a salad or bread. Sometimes I eat just soup if that's all I've got, but I prefer to eat it with something. So I'm just gonna whip up really quick something I have on hand, but it's not in the recipe files. So this will be a new one. You can just take notes. It's really easy to just kind of follow along. So I have these are Ezekiel 4.9 whole wheat pocket bread. So I've just kind of been munching on these the last couple of days. I'll do like a couple of these little sandwiches. So I'm just going to cut this in half and pop it in my toaster. Oh, I was going to get out that parsley. I was going to throw some parsley in that soup. That's all right. Okay, so in the pita, I'm going to be doing hummus. I made a homemade hummus yesterday or the day before, so I'm working on that. And then I'm going to do cucumber, greens, Kalamata olives, and cherry tomatoes. So I'm just going to whip that up really quick. This is just an English cucumber. I'm not going to bother skinning it or seeding it. They're just really good just the way they are. And then I have some of these little tomatoes. I'm just going to slice them in half. These are really good. I've been snacking on these like candy. Oh shoot, tomatoes. Oh, these are not approved on the list, are they? I forgot. Sorry. Okay, so for those of you who are, if you're on the 28-day anti-reflux non-GERD trigger foods, this tomato is a trigger food, so you'll want to leave that out. I apologize. I wasn't thinking. I do eat tomatoes. I didn't used to eat tomatoes, or whenever I did, they were a problem for me, but I eat them now without any issues. So maybe that'll be a little bit of inspiration for those of you who are really missing tomatoes. So these are just, I took out way too many, but these are just pitted Kalamata olives, which add a lot of nice flavor to any dish. I'll put those back. I don't need that many. And that's it. So these are my little pockets. You just open them up. I had them in the toaster so you can see that they're steaming. They're hot. So just open it up like that, and I'm gonna put in a little bit of hummus. Hummus is one of the easiest and is a really versatile. I mean, this, you can do it, you can put in your hummus, you can blend in these olives, which makes it really good. You can do roasted peppers. I put tahini in mine. I've just got some mixed salad greens here. I'm just kind of sorting through it because it's got arugula in it, which I hate. I do not like arugula. I don't know, everyone seems to love it. I don't care for it. When I bought this, I didn't read it first to make sure it didn't have arugula. So I'm just going to be putting half and half in here. And that's all there is to it. See a whole lot of arugula, but I was eating this the other day and it was like every bite had arugula in it. It's so strong to me. I don't like it. All right, so we've got our greens. Just kind of poke it in there. Arugula. Tonight I'm drinking water kefir with actually a little bit of, I don't know, pomegranate juice added in. And I know today's the last day of February, but I will be making this on Saturday's Q&A, Saturday morning. And that'll be our final Q&A for the challenge, or our final live for the challenge. But if you guys are new and you want to continue with this, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the maintenance phase. Here coming up next, we're going to be talking about that. But just because I'm not going to be streaming here from the 28-day group, I will be streaming live from my page. I always do. So make sure you're following me on Facebook if you like my content and you want to continue to follow me. Okay? Okay. So my dinner tonight is going to be these little sandwiches with the winter noodle soup. And I've been snacking on this hummus, so I'm not that hungry. I have these, Costco has these gluten-free rice crackers that I just love. They're really good with hummus. So that's a tip for any of you that are gluten-free. I'm not gluten-free, but every now and then I don't know. I think I was at a party and they had those crackers. I was like, oh my gosh, these crackers are amazing. Hi Terry, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty good. I've been eating those all week. Okay, so tonight's topic, while we're waiting for that soup to cook, it's in the pressure cooker, so it'll take about 5 minutes to cook and another 5 minutes to vent. So let's talk about our topic tonight, which is phytochemicals, and then also the maintenance phase. So reintroducing foods after this 30-day challenge of eliminating common trigger foods for GERD. So first of all, phytochemicals, I mean, it's really, there's not a whole lot to say other than your phytochemicals are found in your plant foods. Okay, so you're not going to find phytochemicals in animal foods or junk foods. You're going to find them in plant foods. You're going to find them in plant foods. So I shouldn't hold up that onion. You're going to find them in your plant foods. You know, when it comes to nutrition, it's really a fascinating topic because we're always learning and we always will continue to learn and we will continue to correct ourselves. So, I mean, it's not like a topic where you can just go out and learn everything there is to know and become an expert. I mean, you could try, but we're constantly learning about nutrition and about disease, about health, and how they're all interconnected. And when it comes to phytochemicals, I mean, really, we know enough about them to know that they are, like I say in the topic, they are the great defenders. They are the chemicals in plant foods that keep us healthy. Would you rather, if you had the choice between having to fight and cure a disease that you've been diagnosed with, or just prevent that disease and never get it in the first place? Of course you're going to pick, well, I would rather never get the disease in the first place. Prevention will always be our choice, but how many of us really make that a priority, you know, all throughout our lives, like making sure that we eat optimally so that we can prevent disease and not have to, you know, figure out how to fight it, whether with conventional methods or natural alternative methods. Once you get sick, you have to figure out how to fight and combat that disease. But prevention means that you're never going to get the disease in the first place. And that's what phytochemicals, in a nutshell, that's what they are. They prevent disease. They keep the cells of the body healthy. They prevent mutations. They prevent cancer spreading. They're very well known for preventing heart disease, which is our country's #1 killer. Like something like 500,000 people drop dead of a heart attack every year. That's a lot of people. That's a really big deal. 500,000 people, that's a really, really big deal. And yet we just kind of act like it's the norm, which, it is, but it's completely preventable. It's completely preventable. And when they study people who primarily eat plants, plant-based diet, whether it's 100% plant-based diet or even, 75, 85, 90% plant-based, primarily plant-based, we find the scientific research shows that we have healthier people. We don't have, in those groups of people, we don't see heart disease as much. We don't see type 2 diabetes as much. We don't see cancer as much, particularly certain types of cancer like breast cancer and prostate cancer and colon cancer. So there really is something to plants. And you can start picking the plants apart, and it's for a variety of reasons. The fiber is beneficial, the water is beneficial, the vitamins are beneficial, the nutrients, the minerals, they're all beneficial. But they've discovered, I can't even remember how many different forms of phytonutrients. It's in the thousands. It's in the thousands, but they've actually identified that they do a lot of research on about 100 or so of the different phytochemicals in plants. And they're learning more and more that it's these phytochemicals in the plants that are responsible for keeping us healthy at the cellular level and preventing disease. I'm going to see what unplugging that will do for preventing that quicker. Hopefully the pasta is ready. If it's not, I'm going to have to turn back on and I won't get to taste it for you. So we need to really get into that mindset that we don't just eat plant-based to fix our GERD or to get rid of our reflux. Eating plant-based is going to be beneficial for you for a number of reasons, and one of them is disease prevention. And if you're anything like me, I worked in an assisted living for 15 years. And one of the things I learned while living there is that I really want to take care of myself so that I can be as independent as possible in my old age. Now, is there any guarantee that I'm even going to make it to be old? No. Is there any guarantee that I'm going to be independent as an older person? No. There's never a guarantee. However, there are things that we can do to decrease our risk of becoming sick and to increase our potential of being independent and medication-free and disease-free as an elderly person. And when there are a lot of really happy elderly people in assisted livings, don't get me wrong, but they're there for a reason. They're there because they need help. They're there because their health is compromised, and they're there because they can no longer function independently. And that's just not what I want for myself or for my husband. I want us to be those people that, live into their elder years, and they are, they don't have to depend on anyone. They don't have to take a ton of medications. They don't have to be at home and in and out of the hospital all of the time, taking care of each other, relying on others for help, all of that kind of stuff. Instead, obviously we all want to live into our older years, and we want to be independent. We want to live our lives, right? And do the things that we want to do without our health being compromised. And so that's really important to me. And that's one of the reasons, I started eating plants because I was so sick, and because I really was hoping that this would be the thing to help me feel better. And boy, oh boy, was it ever, more so than I ever could have imagined. Not only did I overcome a long list of illnesses, including lifelong illnesses that I'd been battling and trying a number of different things for years. So it wasn't a placebo effect. Somebody asked me that recently, if I thought maybe it was a placebo effect. No, not in a million years would I consider it to be a placebo effect, because I had tried so many other things, desperate to improve my health, and nothing helped at all. Sometimes this or that would help a little bit, But like when I stopped eating dairy, I got a little bit better. When I tried an elimination diet, I got a little bit better, but it wasn't until I went on a 100% whole foods plant-based diet that I really saw my health take a turn for the better. And not only did I overcome disease, but my energy, I didn't know that people had the kind of energy that I experience on a plant-based diet. It's so wonderful, and I'm medication free, which is awesome. I rarely get sick, and when I do, it's pretty minor. Just so many different benefits. And so now I'm thinking to the future. I'm thinking to, I want to continue this life. Doing this eating this way has really changed and opened up my life to try new things and do things that I'm interested in and do things that I never even thought I would have the ability to do. I mean, it's really, really changed my life, and I want my life to continue on that path. I want to continue living my life's purpose. I want to continue being able to have the energy and the ability to do the things I want to do. And that includes, you know, my husband and I living into our older years and being disease free so that we can continue to live our lives. So that's one of the reasons why I continue to eat a whole foods plant-based diet. One of the many reasons that I continue to eat a whole foods plant-based diet. I'm going to check and see if that pasta is done, I'm hoping, and the potatoes. So normally with the Instant Pot, you have to let it vent, which means it slowly releases the steam. It's so loud though, I went ahead and just unplugged it. I just want to check and see if those noodles are done. Yep, they are. Okay, so let's go ahead and plate this up and let it cool while we chat. And this is always better the second day. So there is a nice, warm, light, I don't know what you would call it. It's just a noodle soup. That doesn't taste, I only put in 2 tablespoons of the liquid aminos. I think it needs probably closer to 3. I'm just going to put a couple more sprinkles of it on there. And I'm going to let that cool. Julie asks, is your husband vegan too? No, he's not. When I first started this diet, he actually was the main cook in our household. He would get home from work a couple hours before I did and would usually have dinner ready and on the table, and he is an amazing cook. Really, just, I would rather eat his cooking than probably anybody else's. I'd rather eat his cooking than any restaurant. He is an amazing cook. And so for him to take on this challenge of making plant-based foods was, I think he took it on as just that, like as a, oh, you know, that's as a cook, as someone who takes a lot of pride in his cooking and in being a good cook, he was like, oh, I think that was another level of challenge for him to make not only delicious food, but to make it plant-based or vegan. And so I was lucky in that way because, you know, I had someone cooking my dinner for me pretty much every night. And I would just pack up the leftovers. When we were cleaning up after dinner, I would pack up the leftovers for my lunch the next day. So really the only thing that I had to cook was an occasional meal if he wasn't available, and my breakfast when I first started. Now today I cook all my own food because my husband is no longer the cook in our family. He's opened up his own business, and he is busy all the time at work. He's at work 7 days a week, like 10, 11, 12 hours a day. So I usually go down and I'll take him food, or I will just, most days I just work, I cover the bar, that his business is a bar, it's a tap house, and he goes out and eats lunch at a restaurant. So no, he's not vegan, but for a good 2.5 years, he was what we call plant-based, which means he ate a diet that was primarily plants. He never called himself vegan like I do. Usually a person will call themselves vegan if they not only eat plant-based, but they are careful not to buy any products that come from animals, like leather shoes and belts and purses, fur coats and all that kind of thing. Because along my journey, I really looked into the ethical side of veganism, and the more I learned, the more I realized I just really didn't want to be a part of spending my money on a system that is cruel to animals. So no, he's not vegan because he never could make that 100%, even though he kind of wanted to and he felt like he should. He was never really able to make that 100% jump because he didn't want to limit himself, like at a restaurant. If he really wanted to order a pork chop or something like that, he really wanted to have the freedom to be able to do that. So that's where he's at, and today he eats horribly. I really worry about him, actually, because he pretty much eats at a restaurant 7 days a week, and once in a while he'll order something on the kind of the healthy side, but for the most part. Anyway, thank you for your question, Julie, but no, he's not. Okay, so let's move on to part 2 of our topic while I let this cool, which is moving on from this 28-day challenge into what we would call the maintenance phase. So for many of you, you may need to continue on with what we call the healing phase, which is where we continue to eliminate common trigger foods. And that's going to be different for everybody. It really just depends on you and your condition and how sick you are and how many other conditions you have, the state of your digestive system and all of that. So it's going to have to be a choice that each of you makes on your own. So I would say that if you've done really well on this challenge, if you really committed to it, and you've gotten success, you know, you've gone for weeks and you've been, for the most part, symptom free, and you're wondering, you know, what will happen if I reintroduce a cup of coffee, or what will happen if I have a glass of orange juice, or what will happen if I cook with onions and garlic again. Well, the only way you're going to know is to try it and to find out. And for some people, it's just, no, it's not even worth it. I don't even want to go there because I don't want to put myself at that risk. And for others, you know, that they want to know because they want to be able to eat those foods again. So of course, I'm not talking about eating, you know, deep fried foods again. I'm not talking about eating a lot of junk food again. Although there's nothing wrong with you eating those foods once in a while, but it's really important to have the mindset that, I mean, if you want to be healthy and if you want to really heal this disease and reverse this disease, you've got to have the mindset that you are a person that eats primarily healthy food, like 90 to 95% of the time. So that 5 to 10% of the time is when you might allow yourself for some type of a cheat if it's worth it for you. So these are the choices that each of us have to make on our own. But for some people, 30 days is enough to really get a really good start on the healing. Okay, the damage that's been done to the esophagus, the lower esophageal sphincter, maybe the stomach, maybe the throat, just depending on where your damage is. Again, depending on what your conditions are, 28 days might be plenty of time. For others, they might need 2 months, and for some, they may need 6 months, and they may need additional protocols as well, just depending on the state, again, of your digestive tract. So that's going to be a choice that everyone has to make for themselves. So if you are ready to enter into like more of a maintenance phase, so orange juice is a great example. Oranges are an example of a very nutritious food loaded with vitamins and minerals, phytochemicals, fiber, water. It's just a very healthy, beneficial food. It also happens to be a higher acidic food, which again, we talked about. If you've got pepsin lingering in your throat and then that acid washes through the esophagus and activates that pepsin, you're going to have damage to the tissues because that pepsin is an enzyme, and when it's activated, it begins its enzymatic function of breaking down the tissues that are available, which would be your flesh. Okay, so while orange juice, for example, is very beneficial and healthy for someone else with LPR, it is not. So if you're wanting to reintroduce a food during the maintenance phase, you want to be sure and just introduce things one at a time. So for example, if you were to eat a meal like this with no problem, but let's say you wanted to add in and see how you do with tomato. So you want to add in just that one food. You don't want to add in tomato, onions, and garlic. One, that's kind of an overload of acidic foods, and two, you're not going to really know if there was one food that maybe you can tolerate just fine and others that you can't. So tomato is another example of a pretty acidic plant food. So when you're reintroducing, it's one thing at a time, and it's in extreme moderation. So you wouldn't reintroduce 3 cups of coffee a day if you haven't had any coffee for a month, you know, and then you get up first thing in the morning and chug 3 cups of coffee. So you catch my drift. You want to just ease into this one food at a time and see how it goes. And if you have an extreme reaction to that food, if you have a flare, if you have pain, if you have discomfort, if you have reflux, then you know that you're not ready to reintroduce that food at this time. That doesn't mean you may not be ready at another time. You might not, but there's only one way to find out, and that's to play around with it. To play around with it and see what you can tolerate at a particular time in your life. All right? Okay, so we have for dinner, for those of you that are coming on later, we have the Winter Noodle Soup, and the recipe calls for a spaghetti pasta, but again, you could use any pasta. You could use a gluten-free pasta. I just used the spiral because I had it on hand. You could use ramen pasta is really good in this, the curly noodles. And then I've just made a couple of pocket sandwiches that have mixed greens, hummus, a homemade hummus, Kalamata olives, cucumber, and I did put tomato in this because I wasn't thinking when I threw this together. All right, so I'll go ahead and take a bite of this just to prove to you that it's good, but I've been eating these all week, so they're very good. This just reminds me of a cold day, staying home from school, maybe you're sick or something like that. It's really easy to digest, really comforting, really soothing. And I threw that potato in there. It's a nice addition. It will make it a little bit heartier of a soup too, a little bit more filling. And those leeks, I really enjoy those leeks. Just a little bit on the sweet side, I really like them. You guys have never tried that herbs de Provence before. It's a nice little herb mixture. I always just put a tiny little bit in because to me it's pretty potent. It can really overpower a dish. This just has a little sprinkle of it. Cabbage would be good in this. Okay. All right. Well, that's it. So stay tuned on Saturday for my last Q&A, and I am going to be making water kefir Saturday morning. So stay tuned for that and join me Saturday morning, probably at 10:30 or 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right, guys. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful evening.